This is Business Weekly on the BBC World Service, where we'll be taking a look now at university funding. Many universities in the West are really concerned that COVID-19 will keep fee-paying Chinese students away. It's a problem because many of them are dependent on the cash. So what'll happen if they don't come? Manuela Saragossa reports.
My name is Ren Jiaming, that's my Chinese name, and you can call me Alan, that's my English name. I am going to study in the University of York in September. It's my first time studying abroad, so I'm very excited about it.
Alan there is coming to the UK to take a Master's in Global and International Citizenship Education. He's one of the hundreds of thousands of Chinese students heading off to study at a university abroad. In fact, according to the UN, there were almost 1 million Chinese studying overseas in 2017, making China the largest sending country of international students worldwide by far. Many of them head to Western universities. And now there are warnings that the COVID pandemic and worsening relations between China and the West will wreak havoc on university finances, with Chinese students choosing to defer or even cancel their university offers. We'll come to that in just a moment. First, back to Alan. Is he worried about COVID and rising political tensions as he prepares to head to the UK to study?
I have been planning this for a really long time, and I was very determined about this. So when the virus first hit China in February, I didn't worry that much because I thought they're still 7 months away from the fall, and I am very confident that the Chinese government will have it all under control. However, from March, the virus started spreading internationally, and that's when I really became worried. Then everything seemed to be put on hold. Though there are many concerns, I never doubted my choice of going to study in the UK.
Your other job that you manage in China, you manage a programme at a Chinese university that prepares students to enter UK universities. So is your experience being replicated by the other students that you're helping there?
We have 11 students who are going to UK this is fall, according to the plan. But, when the pandemic happened, I think now only one still sticks to the plan, and the others, they will wait and see how it goes. Maybe go to UK next spring or maybe next fall. But there's a good sign that none of them said, okay, I will back up. They still want to go to UK. The program I was managing, it takes almost a whole year to prepare them for the study, postgraduate study in the UK. So it took them a lot of time and money. So it's not easy to just give up.
Ren Jiaming, who also goes by the English name Alan. What do the deferred places Alan refers to mean for the finances of Western universities? Salvatore Barbonis is Associate Professor at the University of Sydney and an adjunct scholar at the Centre for Independent Studies. He says Australian universities are particularly vulnerable, with some degree programmes there made up entirely of students from China.
International students in Australia, and Chinese student tuition in particular, has funded an Australian drive up the international research rankings. Australia is now the third country in the world after the US and UK, and nipping at the heels of the UK in the international research rankings. But we're a small country of 25 million people. It's a bit almost perverse for Australia to be maintaining a research infrastructure on the scale of the UK and larger than that of Japan, Germany, France, or even China itself. It's really kind of unbelievable, and it's all happened in the last 10 years as Australian universities have converted Chinese student revenue into international research success.
But what should they have done then instead?
Oh, I think they should be focusing on educating Australian students. That's what I came here for. I'm American. I'm not an Australian myself, but I was recruited here to try to internationalize faculties at my university. And internationalization plays an important role, but it should play an important educational role.
There's something kind of contradictory though there, isn't there? Because you're there to internationalize the universities, yet you're calling for more nationals to be part of the university system.
All things in moderation. Internationalization is a virtue until you reach the point where it's no longer cross-fertilizing and is instead just running an offshore business to generate additional revenues.
There will be people listening who say that there is something slightly xenophobic about that?
I think it would be wonderful if universities broadly internationalized to become true melting pots. What we have instead in Australia are Chinese student ghettos. They live entirely in a Chinese bubble. Now, that's not internationalization. That's really just, well, exploitation.
So what impact is this coronavirus pandemic going to have on Australian universities?
Well, the coronavirus crisis has been a fiscal crisis for Australian universities. We have job cuts across the sector. They've been very serious. Revenues at some universities are down as much as 20%. People like me are very worried about our jobs. My hope is that Australian universities will seize the opportunity posed by the coronavirus epidemic to return to their core mission, which is fundamentally there to teach local students. After all, these are taxpayer-supported institutions. Now, I don't have much confidence that they will do so. In fact, the Australian university vice-chancellors seem intent on returning to business as usual. But I think if they had a little more vision and a little more foresight, they could take this opportunity to rebuild international student numbers at a more sustainable level and with a broader base than just going back to China looking for that Chinese pot of gold.
Salvatore Barbones of the University of Sydney. Well, Vivienne Stern is director of Universities UK International. It's an outfit that helps universities in the UK with international recruitment and research. What does she make of Professor Barbones' argument? And does it apply to UK universities too?
Australia is quite an extreme example, I think. There are concentrations in some disciplines, but across the board, we don't have the picture that your previous commentator described doesn't really quite fit what's happening in the UK.
So it's fair to say that Australian universities are far more vulnerable to a drop in Chinese students than universities in the UK or elsewhere.
I think your previous commentator also hinted at something else which is part of this picture, which is that, and I perhaps shouldn't criticise the Australian government, but I don't think the Australian government has stepped forward with the kind of financial support, for example, for research that, say, for example, our government has. However, there are pockets in institutions where I think one of the points that your previous interviewee was making about having to be careful that we don't end up attracting students on the basis that they will get an international education and then putting those students in a situation where they find themselves surrounded by students predominantly from their own country. I think that is a risk, and I think it is something that UK universities take seriously.
But is there evidence that the number of Chinese students is down already a lot on the previous academic year?
No, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty about what will happen this academic year. The signs have been actually cautiously positive. However, there are a number of things we cannot possibly know at this point.
Can you say anything about American universities?
It's been hit the last few years by, frankly, the policies of the current administration, rhetoric which has been perceived to be quite hostile to certain countries. I mean, China amongst those, but not only China. And we look at things, for example, like student search patterns. So somebody, say, wants to study engineering, and they go to one of these sites and they search for courses in engineering in the US or courses in engineering in the UK. We sort of collect that data, and I think you can see a little bit of a decrease in interest in the US recently.
But do you think that what the COVID crisis has done now for the UK university system is that it's made people more aware of the dependence on high fee paying Chinese students, and that there will be an attempt to sort of wean themselves off that?
Well, I think we want our universities to be international learning environments, but we don't want them to be dependent on that to conduct outstanding research. So that, I think, is partly why the government's responded with a commitment to increase research expenditure.
Vivienne Stern, Director of Universities UK International, ending that report by Manuela Saragossa.